Yes, we're here with Pauline, a resident of Tottenham, and just going to Pauline a couple of questions about Tottenham and her life in Tottenham. Pauline, how long have you been in Tottenham?
I've been here all my life, right? I would admit to two decades, and maybe three, but definitely not
Well,
going to
I
admit to
think
four.
you could you could pass for 3 decades. What was it like growing up in Tottenham?
It was a really lovely experience, growing up with so many different communities in one place. Um, and I really enjoyed my childhood, popping into the Jewish bakery, then coming out of that into the Turkish shops where they had all the lovely cakes, rich, lovely cakes. Um, I used, there was just so much diversity. But one thing that I liked about my childhood is growing up with very, very different cultures and different people. And what I found is right that it's prepared me for life to deal with anybody, irrespective of where they come from. And I do not see race under no circumstance. I just see the individual.
You've mentioned waste, and obviously, in the UK here, there have been some challenges, particularly for, um, immigrants coming, particularly in the 50s and the 60s from the Caribbean. So, in that regard, what was it like?
I'm not old enough to remember all those experiences, but I am the first generation that was
Yeah,
born here. Yeah,
right.
and I remember that some people had it very, very hard. My dad came here in 1955. He was one of the early settlers. So by the time I came along, he was established. We had our own house. We were settled. So I didn't really experience any of that hardship. But I do know people that did. But as children, you make the best of the situation. I used to love going to the houses where you had all those children um, living in the one room tenements. You know the reason why I liked doing it? Because there's more children to play with. And I remember having um, playtime in the garden or in the basement. I used to love going to those big houses. Down south Tottenham, we have those big houses. The Crescent is one of them. Probably have 8 rooms. I used to love going there because at the bottom there's always the basement, and I used to love going down there and having a look at the basement and playing in the basement. I don't think about basements.
Yeah, and obviously you've been here over a number of years, decades, you said, and you would have seen the changing face of Tottenham, because I know you did say that there were lots of different communities, but now in 2016, it has gone through tremendous change in the last, I would say, 15 years or so. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I live in South Tottenham, and I've noticed the, the transitions uh, in the area, people coming and going, right? And one thing I like about South Tottenham is mainly it's a area that keeps moving. When I came to live here in 1988, we had a big West Indian community, yeah. Then they moved on. Then the African community came along and they took over. Then after that, the I think the Kurdish about 1990. No, the Ethiopian community came next, and there's a lot of Ethiopian people, and then they disappeared. Um, then the Somali came next. The Somali community came next, and then they established themselves and they moved on. Um, then after that came the people from the Montserratian community. They came next, and there were quite a few of them here around 1992. Then they stopped, and the Jamaicans came next and took over. Then after that came the Kosovos, followed by the Kurdish people, Kurdish communities, and they came over here and established themselves, and then they moved on. But there's quite a few Kurdish shops still here. So and now we have everyone.
You obviously there has been, for want of a better word, an influx from Eastern European countries. What impact would you say that have had in your area?
It's good for the area. It's got more choice, more variety. We wouldn't have seen or be exposed to such communities before um, everyone started coming over. But yeah, and you learn about new communities, how they think, and it's good for the area. To be honest, to have a new injection of people coming in, because this area belongs to nobody. Yeah, because as soon as somebody they get established here, they move on, and there's no reason for them to stay here.
Right, so it's transient then, in other
Yeah,
words. People build their lives, the community build their life,
and then move
and
on.
they move on.
Yeah,
And
my dad came in 55,
right.
South Tottenham, yeah, and he moved on, yeah. That's when we started. It was our base, yeah. But I came back in 1988 because I loved the area.
So in terms of, because you mentioned the Caribbean community, and what are the numbers like? Is there a future here? Because in terms of numbers and for the Caribbean community,
Repeat that question again.
because you mentioned that the Caribbean community came in, and so the question I wanted to ask was about, in terms of, is there a future here, do you think, for the Caribbean community in terms of numbers, like existing as a community?
There is still quite a lot of Caribbean people living here still.
Right.
Many of them have businesses. Many of them are still trying to do what they can to help the community as a whole. But I think they probably need a little bit more help when it comes to supporting their enterprises, getting their businesses off the ground. And it's very sad that a lot of people are not working together. They're working, I'm doing my thing, she's doing her thing, and they're doing their thing. Yeah, it should be a collective pool. And I think that the message is starting to come across, and a lot of people are beginning to think that way. But it takes time and energy to change a mindset like that, and start beginning to think as a collective rather than an individual project.
And what do you like about Tottenham?
One thing I like about Tottenham is that everyone looks after each other. Yeah, it's like somebody asked me the other day, what is a Londoner? And I said, well, a Londoner is a person, right, that lives in London, right? I think locally, you're a fully paid up member once you live here, yeah, and people defend each other, right? For example, a couple of weeks ago there was a fire across the road, and everybody gathered round because the people were trapped in the building, and everybody gathered round, running around trying to get a ladder, trying to help, because we were generally concerned. It's a member of our community. So community doesn't mean a black person or a white person or a green person or a yellow person. We all belong to it. We all live here, so therefore we're all part of the community. Yeah, and that's how I grew up, really.
Yeah. Have you got any like favourite places in Tottenham at all? What are your favourite haunts in Tottenham? Are there any?
I think I love to go and sit down on the high road, Tottenham High Road. Those benches, those lovely benches, right? As you come out of the station, you look across the road and they're there. Yeah, you look to the left and they're there. I love those benches, and I like sitting in the Bernie Grant Centre as well. Yeah, I feel like very relaxed, and they've got some lovely food in there prepared by Gina. That's one of the reasons I like going there. But there's certain parts of Tottenham that's very tranquil, like my back garden, for example. You wouldn't think this is my back garden, would you? It feels, when I look out of the window, it feels like I'm in Hertfordshire. Yeah.
So you got a piece of the country in your back garden.
Yeah, but it's a lot of the piece of the country in the whole of Tottenham. You go down to Broad Lane itself, right? It's not like being in Tottenham. It's like being outside. It's lovely. It's peaceful, and you've got all those choices. You can go into Starbucks. You going to Kentucky. The whole place is yours, and no one's rushing you to go anywhere. Yeah. So that's one of my favourite haunts in Tottenham. I've discovered another place which Sonia introduced me to the other day, called Lordship Lane Rec. Yeah, it just feels like I walked into paradise. and they've got a hub in there as well. You can sit there and relax and talk to people, at the various different events. And I think not many people know about that, because I remember as a child, it was an eye opener, because I used to go there as a child with my cousins, right? And then it was called the dump. We used to call it dump. I think that's the place they used to call the dump. It wasn't really developed as a park as yet, but it was the makings were still there. I think that must be the place they called the dump. But it was lovely, because they had all these keep fit exercises and things. And I personally don't like exercise. I'm a little bit of a dancer. I like dancing, yeah. But that's encouraged me to go there. The food and the park and the walk over there. That's a lovely piece of Tottenham.
Yeah. In terms of just looking at places of interest, because Tottenham is in Haringey, and there are lots of different places of interest. Is there any particular place of interest that you like, or that you would want to tell anybody about?
I think Water Toll Park, that park up the road. I call it the Water Toll Park. I don't know the reason why I do it. I do. By the roundabout at Phillip Lane.
Yeah.
It's a lovely piece of green space. Whenever I go there, I
Is
feel
it Downhills Park you're talking about?
no, Phillip Lane. By the roundabout. There's that lovely piece of land with lights, particularly at night time.
Oh, I know you.
Yeah.
Yes.
When the lights they shine, it just feels like I'm in Radlett or I used to live in Hertfordshire. Radlett or somewhere green, yeah. Yeah.
Well, in terms of nightlife, is it a nightlife in Tottenham?
There is a fair amount going on. Depends what you call nightlife. I'm not a nightclub person. Yeah,
Oh, right.
I'm a restaurant person. But
Well,
there are a lot.
tell us about that then.
There are a lot of activities going on in terms of groups. Yeah, I've just discovered the women's group at the Lordship Lane Rec. We had a fantastic time last Friday. We sang. I even got to dance up there, and play acted as well. Some aspects of it, and that's one of the things I like doing. Sort of like meeting people and interacting.
Right. So in terms of social life, then you would see that there's a pretty active social scene in Tottenham.
Yeah, but you have to go out and be part of that circle to know what's going on. Otherwise, you sit in your house and say there's nothing going on. Yeah, so I'm not a nightclub person, as I say, but there are things that's going on out there which